Welcome once again to the CM Kozemen Questions and Answers special, where me, your parasocial, eccentric, art, science and alien life father figure, answers questions sent in from Patreon. If you're a newcomer to this series, imagine it as a kind of Baroque and Heath Robinson's contraption style super chat scheme where people go and subscribe to my Patreon, the link is below, and then they get to ask me questions. And I answer them in a series of bespoke YouTube videos like this one. Now, the last round took place in 2023 and I collected lots of really high quality questions. I think in this episode we're gonna reach the end of those questions. But fear not, if you still want to ask me stuff, you can just follow the link below and in the pinned comment to go to the questions reception hall, where I will collect your question and answer them in a video that will be produced hopefully before 2025. Okay, that out of the way, let's go. Enzo Gomez Diaz asks, this is more of a suggestion than a question, but what do you think about creating some characters for All Tomorrows? What makes your story so awesome, thank you, is the grand scale of things, but maybe creating some characters could make it easier for people to understand. Okay, so for the totally uninitiated, All Tomorrows is a future history of humanity with lots of weird mutated species that I wrote more than 20 years ago, and now it's become really famous. Chances are if you're watching this channel, you have come here through All Tomorrows, so I won't spend more time on that. Now, 2 All Tomorrows books are in the process of production. First of all is the quality reprint of the original All Tomorrows, which you all came to read and love me through, and that's going to be published by Unbound Books in 2025, June or July. And you can still go to the Unbound site or to Kickstarter to pre-order your copy there, and that's going to happen. But there's another All Tomorrows book in the works, and that's the All Tomorrows Redux, where the entire story is being overhauled and rewritten. And just to give you a sense of what's happening, you can actually go to Patreon and read some of the excerpts there. And when you go there, you will realize that yes, the Redux edition will have lots of individual character focuses on different species and on different epochs of those species. So yeah, thank you for the suggestion. I have already been doing something like that. And if you want to read some of those species perspective excerpts, just also go to patreon.com. Sorry everybody, it feels like I'm shilling my Patreon a lot these days, but you know, everybody has to make a living. Anyways, one more question from Alex Friedman, again about All Tomorrows. He asks, the species in All Tomorrows don't name themselves, right? I'm especially interested in the mantelopes. It feels like that's a name given to them by future historians and not by themselves. Yes, the naming scheme I used in All Tomorrows was pretty arbitrary. I basically used whatever sounds cool. And the idea was that this is a future vision transmitted into the past, which is actually now. So the language of the narration is somehow transliterated and the coolest names surface. And that is that. It's really a big challenge now that you think about it, because I may have gone totally scientific and given them Latin binomials, but the story is set millions and billions of years in the future. There would not be a kind of scientific framework that uses Latin binomials left by then. You know, it's just gonna be names. And in the case of mantelopes, it's just such a cool name to pass up, so I just had to do it. But imagine All Tomorrows being conveyed in a sort of universal telepathic meta language from the billion-year future into some unknown recipient in the past, which is actually the present day, and he or she transcribes it using the vocabulary available to them. If it had come to somebody who was a Chinese speaker, it would be Chinese. If it had come to an Arabic speaker, it would have been in Arabic. Actually, when you think about it, there are a lot of religious theological debates about this too, especially about contemporary human religions. When considering Islam, there's a debate saying, did God speak Arabic? Or when you look at Christianity, there are different schools of thought. One says God himself spoke Greek when conveying the Bible or the Old Testament, or is it Hebrew? Anyways, when you consider a sort of revealed text, be it religious or fictional, the language of that revelation is always a kind of point for healthy debate. Anyway, so that's the deal with the names in All Tomorrows. Moving on to the question before the final one from Ryan. He asks Snaiad flyers. That's it. That's the question. Okay, so aside from All Tomorrows, I also have another big project that's getting a Redux version, and that one is called Snaiad, Life on an Alien World. And the deal with Snaiad is like it's a field guide to an alien planet where clade by clade, hundreds if not thousands of creatures are illustrated. Now, there was an earlier version of Snaiad, and it is spelled Snaiad, and you can just go and enjoy the original Snaiad totally free online on cmkozeman.com. That's how generous Daddy Kozeman is. Now, in the original version of the project, I could not get to tackle flying creatures. There were only certain hints at what they could be. But in the Redux version, there's gonna be multiple groups of flyers. So imagine in the present day, if you look at flying creatures on Earth, you got birds, you got bats, and you got flying insects. And in the distant past, you also used to have pterosaurs. There may even have been a time where all of these groups coexisted. Now on Snaiad, the situation is different. Imagine there's birds, there's bats, there's flying insects, there's also flying insects that are the size of condors. There's also few other groups that have also evolved flight, and they all coexist. And if you want to see sneak previews and revelations, the place to go also is patreon.com. The links are below. I did not make this world, but I'm just trying to stay alive in it. So there's that. And the last question comes from Tamari, a very talented world builder herself, the mind behind the Phtanum project, that's spelled Phtanum, and go look it up. It's a very creative, very dynamic, and sometimes quite scary world with giant creatures that look like elements of the landscape just rumbling about. The skill that Tamari has in illustrating these creatures is also scary, and I'm always happy to see younger generations developing masterful skills that I can only dream to attain. Anyways, Tamari asks the following. Hello Memo, I want to start doing art commissions soon. However, I don't really have any experience. Do you have any sort of contract you use as basis for commissions? In general, how do you go about creating online commissions? Feel free to answer when you have the time, cute face. Okay, now I'm sorry this has become the most shilliest shill episode of Q&A time ever, but yes, aside from Patreon stuff, I also do commissions to get on by as a struggling, surreal, speculative evolution artist, just hustling for an honest buck. But yes, commissions have been part of my life, seriously, for the past year. But even before that, I have been doing paintings for album covers, book covers, even hipstery stuff like posters for local hipster cafes and bars. And if you want to see a sampling of such work, you can just go to cmkozeman.com/covers.html. The link is also below and in the pinned comment. So there. Now, unfortunately, how many commissions you get kind of depends on how well known and famous you are. And personally, I can attest that before last year, I was not that well known. So yes, I did get commissions and sometimes they were really lucrative, but it was like a windfall. You know, I had my website presence, so people would look at that and they would contact me. And they say, okay, can you do a cover for my new book, or your art is really groovy, we are doing a label. And then we would enter negotiations through email. I would quote a price, they would pay either through Western Union or some other sort of bank transfer. If you live in the United States or, well, the Western world, PayPal is also an option, but suffice it to say, PayPal is not an option where I live. Aside from doing commissions, I have also worked in the commercial world as an advertiser and an ad writer. So I really know that creative work or creative business is just 90% about managing customer expectations. And communication between two people, even when they're interested in the same stuff, can sometimes really get hilarious and funny. I'll give you an example from my life as an advertiser. So a decade ago, I was actually working as a strategist and a researcher and an English language editor at one of the leading ad agencies in my country. It was like a madman life. So you meet a lot of customers, and a lot of our customers were really big companies like, oil companies, big banks, car companies. And the agency made most of its money by filming TV commercials for them. That's actually how these things still work. So it was a really glamorous sort of agency. And when somebody walked into the agency, the first thing they would see would be some abstract, colorful, modern paintings that the boss bought to kind of liven up the place, and they were really fancy and really nice. So you walk in and there's these bright paintings in the lobby. So that's that. Now fast forward to some months later, a lady comes in directly talking to the guy who owns the agency. She is one of the wealthiest people in this country. Her family is like a cross between the Walton family and Elon Musk and maybe Warren Buffett and a few others. They're like ginormously, stupendously, unfairly wealthy. So when a biddy old lady walks in with a personal request, the guy who runs the agency, the boss, doesn't really have the option of saying no. And she says, "I have a personal request for you. Of course, I will pay handsomely." And the boss says, "Okay, what you got?" And he's a very sharp guy, by the way. Still have lots of respect for him. And she says, well, something along the lines of, "I want an intro video like your intro for my foundation I run for." Insert tax-reducing quote-unquote charity foundation purpose there. "I just want an intro video like your intro." And he's a bit puzzled and he says, "Okay, we'll kind of do an intro video for you." So he puts all the designers and the video guys to work, taking time off their actual clients and just trying to create an intro video for this biddy lady's foundation. But she says, "No, I want the intro colors. And then this goes through 4 iterations, but she's still not happy. So the boss senses that, this woman is about to get pissed off, and believe me, you don't want to piss off this biddy lady because her family owns several companies that directly do business with the agency. So he says, I guess there must be a misunderstanding. Let us send you our driver with a limousine and you come in and tell me what exactly you want and we'll make it happen. And so she walks in and she says, "You see, I want these colors," and points to the modern art hanging in the lobby of the agency. God damn. So she'd been thinking that the intro video must look like the intro pictures in the agency because she'd been there before once, but because she doesn't know shit, she just conveyed it using those words. Now, this is one of the most ridiculous and time-wasting examples of such a communications breakdown in my memory. But if you're gonna do commissions, prepare for such communication breakdowns. They may not be as ridiculous or as difficult, but they will happen. So, dovetailing on this funny story, here are Daddy Kozman's tips for being a successful commissions artist. Number 1, you must be lucky and somehow be well known in your circles at least. Number 2, You must have a strong online presence. I know it's old-fashioned, but when you have a real website, it really shows people that you kind of put effort into what you're doing. A lot of people also flip Instagram or Twitter and they say, okay, here's my stuff, blah, 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 blah. Okay, you must have Instagram too with some of your sample work. But if you take yourself seriously, you must have a website. It's your storefront, it's where you sell your products. As I just told you, I've got a page dedicated just to cover illustrations. So if somebody wants to commission a cover from me, I just send them this link and they can take a look at what my work is like. And your website must also visibly contain your contact details, because people are really inefficient when they're dealing with other people's internet stuff. They just want to see stuff right there and they want to be able to contact you right there. So you have to get them visible. If you're using a social media account, your email must be in your link in bio or your website, so you must be contactable. Number 3, Tamari spoke about contracts and stuff, but I find that a little ineffective and a little pretentious, because come on, I mean, if somebody swindles you on a $100 commission, are you really gonna be able to lawyer up and enforce that contract? It just doesn't work that way. And I've seen this happen loads and loads of times, not just with commission artists, but also with independent people working for game companies. There's always these NDAs, contracts flying all over the place. You don't need that. You don't need any of that shit. Ideally, your word should be more reliable than the legal systems of your country and the countries of your client. Now, I had cases where, for example, somebody was not satisfied with a commission, even after explicitly and in writing saying that this was great. This happened to me like 2 times out of hundreds. But when that happens, I don't raise a ruckus. I don't say, but you said... That's something weak people do. Contracts, especially if you're working online, is something that weak people stoop down to. So what I did is, okay, look, you said this, but the customer is always right. I actually use this phrase. I am going to redo it one more time, and after that, unfortunately, I need to move on to other projects, so here is your second iteration. And they got what they wanted, and they were happy, and actually one of those people commissioned me again. So you really need to keep your customers happy. A happy customer is a customer that will come back, and I think the best place to learn this would be to work in an actual job. You could be working in a restaurant, you could have a stint in an actual advertising agency like I did. You really learn a lot about people and communicating with them. Now, some clients are very easygoing. In fact, I had cases where clients, they were all women by the way, came to me and just threw me money, and they told me, draw anything you want, I just want to have a creature from you. Now that's the juiciest, loveliest sort of commission. But once again, I had to reach a certain level of fame before that could happen. Now usually my modus operandi with creature commissions is as follows. I put out a call for commissions. Also, you must always advertise your work. Ideally, Instagram, Twitter, social media is your advertising space, and then your website or your email is your office. So people see stuff on Instagram, go to your website, look at it in further detail, see that you're serious, and decide to contact you. This is how it has worked with me almost all the fucking time. Then people see my work and contact me saying, are you open for commissions? I say, yes, what do you want? And then you get a number of different varieties of work. Now, I had cases where I illustrated people's pets. Now, that was a really good one. I had made paintings for people's kids. Like this one lady had a daughter who was, I think, a Capricorn. So I kind of drew a cartoonish cute goat creature for her, and people really spend money for other people or pets they like. That's one of the rules of the thumb in this game, so be prepared for that. You could be specializing in the weirdest, gnarliest, darkest scenes or the most esoteric creatures. But when somebody comes up to you and says,
Can you draw Mr. Piddles as an alien cat, but not too alien, because I still want Mr. Piddles to be recognized as a cat, but not too much, but...
You must be able to say, yes ma'am, and get the fuck down to work. I've had also cases where people asked me to draw their creatures from their own Dungeons and Dragons settings. That's become really popular these days, so that's kind of become really nice for me. I had cases where people asked me to draw their favorite fictional creatures. I'm talking about their fictional favorite kaijus or even realistic Pokemon. They are really fun to do. They just know your art style from before and they want to see their favorite character rendered by you. Now those are also really fun and happy and satisfying commissions. Then you got cases where science fiction authors or fans want you to illustrate certain creatures or characters from their books or their favorite books, and those are also fun to do. And with some few other miscellaneous styles of commissions, these are the list of commissions I get, and I'm always happy to do them. The customer is always right. Look, regardless of whether you do alien art or whether you do jewelry or whether you work in a cafeteria, working for others has a kind of mental discipline all of its own, and you must be prepared to surrender your own preconceptions, your own comfort zone, and your own maybe even sense of dignity to serve these people. And that's not bad. It actually teaches you a thing or two about humility. And also look at it from the other perspective. These people are giving you their hard-earned money, around $100 or even more in my case. So you must be prepared to do anything to satisfy them. Now, of course, this doesn't mean you can't have any rules. For example, one of my rules is I don't do gore or I don't do smut. I have done a few sexy characters, but, I know smut, I know degeneracy when I see it, so there's that. So you can refuse stuff, but be open and upfront about it. And when you're communicating with your clients, always communicate via email and always be cordial. When you type, use the language professionally. Don't cut any corners. Don't say okay or something like that. You must be a professional. Which at the end brings me to my last point. For crying out loud, don't fucking undersell your work. Now I see very talented people charging like $30, $40 for a finished piece. Get the fuck out of here. Not only are you underselling yourself and, making the market difficult for any of us, but really that is the value of art. That is the value of especially speculative evolution and science fiction art. You must charge at least $100 for even the simplest commission. You want a sketch? $100. Okay, maybe your menu could go $100 for a sketch, then $110 for a finished painting. Doesn't matter. Look, even if you go, look at the prices these days, look at the economy these days. You want to go get your fucking oil changed, it costs even more in some places. You want to get a nice romantic meal, that costs more than $100. Wherever you are from, 100 American dollars is the bare minimum to charge. And don't make me come down there. Respect yourself. I see this in some artists. They say, maybe $15 is a good bet because... No, $15 is how hard you're being on yourself. $15 is how low your own sense of self-esteem is, and I won't have it. Daddy Cosman won't have it. So please, for crying out loud, after you do everything professionally, as I just told you, you're not gonna draw a single fucking smiley face for less than $100 American. And that's fucking that. Bish bash bosh. I hope you liked my advice, everybody. I was a little harsh, but that's kind of a hyperbole, but I'm also dead serious. Don't undersell yourself. And that brings us to the end of this round of Q&A. Can you believe it? Thank you all for listening so far, and if you like what I've been doing, please consider supporting me on Patreon. And if you agree with my advice or if you disagree with me, please leave a comment so this video gets a kind of kick up in the algorithms. And that's that. Thank you all for listening and for your questions, and I love you all. Goodbye.